New details are emerging about the status of Nigeria's cash swap policy. According to the governor of the central bank, Godwin Emefiele, the Apex Bank has retrieved more than half of the old Naira notes in circulation. That's about 1.9 trillion of the 3.23 trillion old Naira notes in circulation. Emefiele disclosed this when he met with the ad hoc committee set up by the National Assembly to investigate the squeeze brought on by the cash exchange process. In October last year, the Central Bank of Nigeria announced its plans to redesign the country's currency, the Naira. A month after the announcement, it unveiled the new 200, 500, and 1,000 Naira notes. At this point, the public was given up to January 31st to deposit the old at the banks in exchange for the new. Barely a day before the expiration of this deadline, Emefiele announced a 10-day extension ending February 10th. And at Tuesday's meeting with the lawmakers, he said even after the deadline, the public will be able to exchange their old currency for new ones. He also quoted support for the policy, which he said is aimed at strengthening the Nigerian economy. The CBN boss also attempted to provide explanations regarding some of his guidelines that have caused the squeeze of the Naira on the markets, resulting in long queues at nearly all ATMs in the country. Here's how it's been going so far.
Many Nigerians and groups concerning the initial January 31 deadline for the validity of the old notes, as the scarcity of the newly designed 200, 500, and 1,000 Naira notes prevailed in the country. While the banks claim not to have enough available notes to circulate to the public, some individuals have alleged that they are being charged extra by banks and POS operators in order to obtain the new notes.
The issue be say, me I never really go bank, say I won't go change the new note, but my wife don't go. But when you go, they didn't give him new note. They didn't give you a new note. They tell that new note is not available for now. They should use the old note. That's what I told you there.
It has not been easy because we are also doing POS. So most times, customer does not collect like the old notes. They always ask for new notes. And the ATM too, closer to us, does not dispense. So it's hard.
Actually, it's not easy. For now, it's not easy. As for last week, I tried to deposit all the money that old one that is with me. But to collect new one, I didn't get anyone. So the only customer that just give me like 5 to just hold for hand. But whatever I want to do, I do transfer.
According to the CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, there will be a 7-day grace period beginning from February 10 to February 17, 2023, in compliance with Sections 20, Subsection 3 and Section 22 of the CBN Act, allowing Nigerians to deposit their old notes at the CBN after the February deadline when the old currency would have lost its legal tender status. However, questions have been asked on how all of this would affect the economy at large.
It's going to at least reduce the current tension a bit because already we are dealing with a very serious crisis situation, where in some environments you have close to 70% of the cash as old notes in many environments, and we are on the verge of those people losing their money. So this extension at least will bring some relief to all those who are who intend to exchange their old notes for new ones. But whether these 10 days is enough is a different matter, because given the magnitude of the deficit, deficit now in terms of the new notes that needs to be provided, I don't think this 10 days is enough.
While those in power of authority hold on to their decisions, it is hoped that considerations and adjustments will be made by making resources available in order to alleviate the suffering of ordinary Nigerians. Bettina Nweli, reporting for News Central.
Now that you have caught up with happenings in Nigeria regarding getting hard cash, let's talk about this over the next few minutes here on The Square. You're welcome, and my name is Keminni Amanor. Joining our gathering today are Dr. Muda, Yusuf, his director at the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. We also have Paul Alaje, He is an economist. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the square.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Look, many of you warned about this. You saw it coming. The CBN insisted, and here we are today. I'll start with you, Paul. How would you describe what you see happening right now?
As of today, I've been to 7 commercial banks on Allen Avenue in Ikeja. I've been doing personal research to understand, and it has been participatory in nature. Participants are running participant observation. I can tell you that if anybody goes to Allen Avenue, all the commercial banks, there is no one ATM dispensing cash to those people who want them. People have gone to the bank. Without mentioning names of banks, I can tell you one of the banks have reported that what they've dispensed this money is 2,000 Naira to several customers that have showed up in the bank. By implication, the issues around having cash, I think the central bank will need to, I doubt if a lot of thought has gone into it. This is because in Lagos State, where I am currently, you see a lot of people moving from one point to another using what we popularly is tricycle, but popularly called keke here in Lagos. Now, to use keke, most of the keke riders will ask you to pay them cash. You go to some business center, you want to do transactions, maybe you want to print, small businesses, especially the impact of this on MSME is really very negative. Again, I've also been to banks, this morning, 4 banks, they've had network issues. You are unable to transfer. They've complained. They said they've told their head offices. I'm not saying cashless policy is not good. It is very, very good. But all the countries I've been to around the world, there is still a place for cash. For China, to the United Arab Emirates, UK, United States, there's still a place for cash. We cannot just retire cash. And from what banks are saying, they don't even have access to these notes. And the Apex Bank Central Bank has warned them not to give old notes out, even if some of them had the old notes. They say they cannot do that because they are not sure, they are not being monitored by the Apex Bank.
Very well. I'll move on to Dr. Yusuf now. Doc, I can imagine that if your experience, if you had any at all, will not be different from Paul's. But I want us to talk about the meeting yesterday with the National Assembly Ad Hoc Committee. Was that meeting fruitful, and did it enlighten this entire situation at all?
Well, thank you for inviting me. Yes, I align myself with what Paul said. The experience out there has been extremely very bad. And for me, this whole exercise was completely unnecessary. Completely unnecessary. Now, talking about the meeting that you are referring to, the whole idea of the meeting is to convey the feelings of the people to the central bank governor. But unfortunately, I don't think anything concrete came out of that meeting. My reading of the meeting is that the CBN is still standing its ground. It's not shifting ground on the 10 days. And it's not shifting ground. The only thing he said, which may be additional, which also was not exactly anything different, is that after the 10 days deadline, people are free to deposit. But the biggest issue we are dealing with was not addressed. And these questions were asked by members of the committee. The chairman of the committee did not allow the CBN governor to answer it. Because the fundamental issue is supply. Now, he said that they have been able to rake in about 1.9 trillion. The question is, were we able to give back the 1.9 trillion to those people who brought it? Certainly no. So it's like impounding or mopping up people's cash without replacing it either with the new note or with the old note. That is what is creating the crisis.
But so it brings me to, watching the sitting yesterday, I also had the same question. How then do we know what is circulating? From where you sit, why do you think, Dr. Yusuf, the central bank governor is unable to readily give those figures, like he's able to tell us what they've mopped up so far?
Well, that is left to him to answer. In any case, the way the majority leader, who was chairman of that committee, the way he conducted the meeting was as if he was trying to protect the CBN governor. The members were shouting that, in fact, he reluctantly even allowed them to ask questions. After asking questions, rather than allow the CBN governor to respond, he said, no, the time is fast spent, blah, 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 that the CBN governor have noted the questions. And the man left. So they have not achieved anything.
Very well. We'll stick on the issue of supply.
If you mop up 1.9 trillion, did you give people back their money? Of course he didn't. How can somebody deposit maybe 1 million or 500,000 cash that he or she is using for a business, and you ask the person to go to the ATM to go and collect money, 5,000, 10,000?
Very well.
That is most unfair.
I'm going to come back to you.
Unjust.
Dr. Yusuf, I'm going to come back to you on the same point, but I'll move on to Paul now. Still on the issue of supply, the concerns that Dr. Yusuf has raised is something that, as he alluded to, the members on the ad hoc committee had also raised. But the position of the CBN was that this is part of the mop-up exercise. Do not give the new notes over the counter. I come in with my 1 million Naira. I go to the ATM maybe for as little as 10,000 Naira. Paul, is this really helping, the banking industry as, or even the economy at large, as Emefiele would like us to believe?
What you should know is that if the care is not taken, Nigeria may go into another recession this year because velocity of money will be drastically affected by this policy. And when we go into a recession this year, if incidentally something happens around Nigeria, outside Nigeria, it will be very easy for politicians to say it was an exogenous factor that has caused Nigeria to go into a recession. And that is why we have said time and again that those that must control or that must manage Nigerian monetary and fiscal system must be those who are professionals. And by that, those who are economists. It's very important for people to understand that economy don't just fail. If you mix your emotion, your feelings with the economy, then you will have to pay a lot for such mistakes. This is the reason. When somebody who has access to 500 Naira and who has lost faith in the network system, recall that sometimes a year or 2 years ago, the members of National Assembly have even told INEC to be very wary of using internet for transfer, of election. How much more when you want, over 80 or 100 million people to rely on a database that was not functional when less than 40, 50 million people were using the platform regularly? This is what central bank is saying. All Nigerians that are within the banking sector are mature to go online to do their transaction. Why have I said that? In the analogy you painted, you took your 1 million or 500,000 or 100,000 or 200,000 to the bank, and you look at the limit and the charges ATM we take from you, and you're not comfortable with those. What do? You therefore resort to going online, and you know that sometimes if you do transaction, it may take days before reversal. And some persons don't just have a bank account because of our clothes. That is the video trending. People fighting for the money they worked for. In Nigeria, we seem to suffer for everything. In Lagos, I can also talk about the queues. And when it's your turn to buy fuel, you hear that, no, you need to bring cash. And then you are bringing cash. And you say, well, I can't get cash from bank, I want to pay. So what do I do? You are asked to go to the nearby POS. And the POS says for 10,000 transaction, you need to pay 2,000. That is 20% off my sweat, because I want to buy gas in a country where the country we say is flowing with milk and honey. And I must say this on this platform, that those who are putting so much, suffering on Nigeria, were people that benefited from Nigeria when Nigeria was good. They went to university, their clothes were washed, they got the very best of this country to give Nigeria the basic it's a lot of issues for them. But you see, with this policy, if it continues like this, without something tangible being done, without central bank improving supply significantly, I can tell you by third or fourth quarter, you should be expecting a major drop in the GDP growth rate of the country. And if the care is not taken, Nigeria may just be looking at a recession very close by to us already. You know what inflation is saying at over 21%.
Well, according to the central bank governor, it would seem that this mop-up exercise and the squeeze that is currently being experienced by Nigerians is rather helping the economy and insecurity. But I want to hear from you, Dr. Yusuf. Paul, I see you're shaking your head. I'll come back to you for what you're thinking. But let me hear from Dr. Yusuf now. Dr. Yusuf, how is this affecting small businesses who day in, day out need the hard cash?
Well, I think this policy is taking a huge toll on small businesses. Rather than help the economy, I think the policy is hurting the economy. So it's the exact opposite. Now, the biggest sector, the sector that used most cash, is the trading sector and the agricultural sector. These sectors are populated largely by the informal sector players. They are populated a lot by those who are not particularly so literate. They are populated by those who are in the rural areas. And when it comes to employment, these two sectors contribute to over 60% of the employment in this country. And they are dominated by the use of cash. They are driven by cash. So this policy is hurting them significantly in no small measure. Because how do we explain a situation that the money you are using as your working capital, because most of them, what they have with them is their working capital. Whether they are selling livestock, whether they are selling tomatoes, whether they are selling yams, and they are dealing in cash, what they have is their working capital. You said they should deposit it in the bank, you want to give them new notes. You took the money and you did not give back them their money, whether an old note or a new note. It has crippled their business. That is why you see all those crises all over the place. Paul was talking about recession. We should be worrying about social unrest. That's what we should be worrying about. Look at what happened to the president in Kano. Has that ever happened since he came into office? I mean, there's tension all over the place. How do you take people's money and you are not giving them back? And you ask them that there should be no payment across the counter. Everybody should go to ATM. ATM is not dispensing. It's very punitive.
Very well.
So I don't think this makes sense at all. The CBN has to quickly go back to the drawing board, and the president needs to also be properly advised. If they don't have enough currency, they should allow the old and the new to work together for some time. That is the way it is done in all other places. Old and the new, you use them over 6 months, over 1 year. That is the way it is done. What is all this stampede about? And now you have an election coming. Look at the implication, even for the party that is in power. It's not being unfair to the party.
Very well. So,
and all of these things, let me tell you, are completely unnecessary. You say you want to do cashless economy. Now, look at the data, whether there is even any urgency. The NIBBS reported, as at 2022, in 2022, 395 trillion naira cashless transactions took place in this country. 395 trillion. It was 42% increase. POS transaction was over 8 trillion. Cash as a percentage of money is only 5%.
Very well. Dr. Yusuf, I'm going to come back to you, but let me quickly take Paul's thoughts on when, Mr. Emefiele says that inflation is moderated as a result of this. I saw you shaking your head when I made that comment. Why so?
Well, why has Monetary Policy Committee increased NPR if he has faith in the moderacy of inflation? Monetary Policy Committee on 100 basis points increased NPR from 16.5 to 17.5%. That in itself has implication. If you say that inflation moderated because of the policy, I will tell you why. What the central bank has done, it has put a rope on the throat of the economy and forcefully drag down money supply without minding what happens to growth, without minding what happens to the economy. What is important to the Apex Bank is to ensure that inflation comes down by force. Now, listen to this. If you cut down inflation, what is happening to employment? Because you continue to increase interest rates and to mop up cash, you are telling business owners to close down their shops, to end their businesses. The implication of this is that you are going to have high unemployment, high poverty, and eventually inflation is still of double digit. The target for central bank for inflation in Nigeria is single digit, though you can say maximum 9%, properly speaking between 6 to 9%. Inflation as of today is over 21%. So how would you say inflation is moderating because we have a marginal reduction? And that marginal reduction, can we say that is the point of inflation? We cannot say until you see 2 or 3 more reports. And do I expect inflation to go down to 18% when January figure is released, or I expect it to go to about 15%? The answer is no. Inflation will still be within the range of 20%, not just double digits, but as high as 20%. So you cannot say because you are going to allow people to do transactions. That will be that in a game of football, rather than allowing players to put the ball in the net, you are going to the scoreboard and you are literally changing the numbers from the scoreboard, because when you force people not to do transactions and people are staying at home, they are unable to go to work because they cannot pay for fuel. We have crises in the petroleum subsector. We have crises in the banking sector. Then people will have to stop work. And how would your economy grow? Because growth and inflation, you just have a choice to make as policymaker in the economy.
I see. Now, what the committee also asked for is a receipt of how much has gone out. It's something that Dr. Yusuf, you've also talked about. But Paul, tell us, how important will such information be to the entire process that we're experiencing now, to know how much money we have expended so far?
It's going to do a lot. This is because when you say that you have raked in close to 2 trillion naira and you are not giving us how much you have given out, and I think the record CBN should have and is actually how much has gone out, because it's in control of that. It's not in control of how much people we bring in. But the one you are in control of, say 1 trillion has gone out, then we can say, okay, the impact will be 50% of what is expected. And if you say you have printed XYZ amount, the question will then be, where will it be? So that figure is so important because it will help our people, it will help us to measure the level of transparency of the Apex Bank. But when the figure is not mentioned, then we will all be assuming as to what has been done. And we may not even understand the quantum of the problem we have gotten ourselves into.
Indeed. Dr. Yusuf, you talk about the entire process being punitive. In his defense, one of the things he mentioned was the fact that those who have been seen in videos spraying the money, splurging at events, will be prosecuted of sort, because he says that the DSS and the EFCC will be going after those people. I want to know what you think about it, but as you're telling us what you think about it, also touch on what crime will those people have committed if they've got their money and they're splurging.
You see, his reference to that is just trivializing the issues. This is not the first time people are spraying. I'm not saying it's a good thing to spray money. I think there are laws against that, and those who are in charge of enforcing the law will enforce the law. But he was trivializing the issues. Because if you had enough scarcity, enough supply, we will not have all of these crises. So the issue is not so much about those who are spraying the money. The issue is about the fact that there's a subtle attempt in a way to achieve the so-called cashless objective. because he has been complaining that 85% of money is outside the system and they need to rake it in. First of all, let me say that for those who understand monetary economics, cash is not to be sitting in the bank. Cash is meant to be outside the bank. So there is nothing wrong if 85% of your currency is outside the bank. It's just like complaining that 85% of your ATM cards are outside the bank. Is ATM cards supposed to be sitting in the bank? It's just like saying that all the checkbooks are outside the bank. Go and withdraw the checkbooks. Are they supposed to be in the bank, or they are supposed to be with those who are using the checkbooks? What we should be worrying about as far as monetary policy is concerned is money supply. Cash is only about 5% of money supply. So the amount of cash we have in the country is not anything to worry about. Of course, we can improve on it. The total money in the economy today, as of December, was 52 trillion naira. Cash was only 2.6 trillion. What percentage is that? And this cash is essentially with all these small people, innocent Nigerians, petty traders. And you now leave all of that, all the main money that is in the banking system, you are now chasing the 5% that is outside the banking system and complain about liquidity.
Very well. So
when you talk about liquidity today, who is the main culprit? The CPN gave out ways and means over 22 trillion to the federal government.
Very well. When we come back, gentlemen, I want us to look at the unbanked population and what appears to be a parallel cash economy that is going alongside this entire cash swap policy. Stay with us here on The Square. We'll be right back. Today on The Square, we are asking where the new Naira notes are. There are long queues at ATMs in banks because people want to exchange their old Naira notes for new ones before the expiration of the new deadline, which is February 10th. Still with me here are Paul Alaje. He is an economist. We also have Dr. Muda Yusuf, who is Director for Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience. I come to you now, Paul. Let's talk about what appears to be the parallel cash exchange economy going on. Now, during the process or the engagement with the ad hoc committee, the CBN governor mentions that they have engaged this over 1 million POS operators around the country. About 30 of them have been asked to go to the rural areas and take their monies. But as you indicated before, it has become a very expensive venture. Now, talk to us about how this could affect the general growth of the economy if this persists.
So let me say this. What central bank has said, I'm not sure the strategists at the central bank understand the quantum of what they are dealing with. When we say that a country has a population of 211 million people, let's even assume that figure is inflated. A country that is even 200 million people, and you are getting 1 million POS operators. We need to, first of all, we need to verify that number, that 1 million people.
1.5.
Because, and hello, are you there?
Yes, he says 1.5 million of the POS operators across the country.
That means we should have less than 200 per POS operator. So, but I doubt the number of POS operators that are in rural area today. I doubt, and it's my opinion. Because when you go to rural area, a lot of these people still have old notes. And the last 2 weeks, we've been going from state to state, rural communities, to check what is going on and how much of them are. And I don't know for you and some of your colleagues, in the last 20 days or the last 1 month, you can calculate from all the transactions you have done, what percentage has happened in new notes and the ones that have happened in the old note. So the central bank just need to understand that, yes, the intention is good, but the method, the strategy deployed is not just correct. and it's hurting the economy. So the impact will be tremendous, and it's going to be negative. Already, you see that you go to some places you want to buy. Let me give you an instance of what is happening for those who are within the rice value chain, essentially when you go to market to buy paddy. If you don't go with the new note to buy paddy, it's really going to be difficult for you as an aggregator to get rice paddy. And rice paddy is the rice source that is used in meal. As an operator in the sector, you're going to have a lot of challenge. And if you want to transfer to them, they tell you they don't have network in that particular area. This is because the BTS towers in the area does not cover some network, it does cover some network. Are we saying they should change the entire market and relocate the market to where they have network? Or you are going to talk to network operator to expand on their coverage so that transactions can be seamlessly done in that area. And if the implication is that by March, you should be expecting to pay, you are now paying about 38 to 42,000 naira per bag of rice. I'm talking of local rice. So we're ready to pay between 45 to 50,000 because supply, if you reduce supply of money beyond what is necessary, it may have impact on supply of goods. And when supply of goods continue to reduce and demand continue to increase, you will still have high inflation. In fact, inflation may go higher than what you're expecting, and it will be counterproductive to what the Central Bank of Nigeria wishes to achieve.
Very well. So, Dr. Yusuf, I ask you the same question. Can this parallel cash exchange economy, like the Tier 3 banks, like the POSs, can they fill the gap for business owners, particularly small business owners, in the meantime, albeit it's very expensive?
No, they cannot. They cannot, because what we are dealing with now is a situation of acute shortage. And in any system, when you have scarcity, you create a black market. Just as you have in fuel. If there is scarcity of fuel, the black marketers will surface. If you have scarcity of foreign exchange, the black market will surface. Now we have scarcity of currency, there's now a black market. That's exactly what is happening. And no matter how many DSS, EFCC that you deploy, there's no way it can solve that problem unless you address the issue of supply. If Emefiele is saying that he has taken 1.9 trillion from people, he should give them back their 1.9 trillion. If there's any suspicious transaction, you can single them out and deal with them. That is why you have financial intelligence unit.
Right.
You cannot have a sweeping approach.
Dr. Yusuf, talk to me about how bad this black market is. What are business owners telling you?
No, it's so bad. I mean, Paul gave you an example of how if you want 10,000, you have to pay 12,000. If you want 50,000, you have to pay 60,000. What is the profit that the market people are getting? And that is what the market women are complaining about. They say all the money they are using for business has been taken away, put in the bank. Now they need cash. They have to go to POS, and if they are taking 10,000, they charge you about 1,000 or 2,000. And they say that how much is the profit they are making? So the man has paralyzed a major segment of the economy. So unless you deal with scarcity, these problems will continue to recur.
Very well.
And this 10 days is clearly unrealistic. And somebody needs to escalate this matter before it degenerates further.
I wonder who could escalate. Who do you have in mind?
No, everybody. I mean, the National Assembly have escalated it. President also has his own advisors. Because I don't know how we can get to this ridiculous point where you be inflicting this kind of pain on Nigerians, innocent Nigerians.
Very well.
They are traveling with high cost of food, high cost of diesel, no fuel. They will now add this one to it. And this is not going to achieve anything.
Indeed. Paul, I come to you now. One of the outcomes that the central bank is hoping for is that they can rope in the unbanked population. Based on what you're telling me so far, How possible could this be? Or perhaps this could rather backfire and make people keep their monies in their homes?
Well, it's obvious. I've been to 8 banks today on Allen Avenue alone, and all the 8 banks, they have the same slogan: no cash, no new currency, no old currency. We don't have cash to give you. If you want to do any transaction, wait till cash gets to our ATM. No more cash across the counter. That is the new slogan all the commercial banks are saying. So if somebody manages to get cash, what do you think such person will do with it? The person will definitely want to keep his cash because he does not know when next he will have access to it. That will then become counterproductive to what the Central Bank of Nigeria is trying to achieve. So here is the issue. If the Central Bank don't quickly respond to the market behavior, honestly, I can tell you that you are going to see even high inflation. And I can tell you, there is a test. The National Bureau of Statistics is going to have the litmus test. Because if you tell us that inflation figure in January is lower than what you had in December, then many of us will just laugh. Because already, what is the cost of things this month that we're experiencing? The price of PMS, what is the average price, which drives virtually everything? And money to buy it is not even there. If you are going to pay more to have access to money, that means the money in your pocket is coming at a cost. You know, so it's a bit of challenge, and I think the authorities, we need to think about it. If Central Bank wants to tell us that, hey, Nigerians, you need to give us 6 weeks where you will not have enough money supply. So we just know that we have something to deal with from maybe 10th of February till perhaps after the elections. We know we have 6 weeks, and we know that the battle we are starting at an expiry date. But nothing is mentioned. If you want to take away these monies without replacing it, I can tell you that it's going to have tremendous negative impact on the following. First, you are going to see your GDP slump. After that, you are going to see high inflation. Already, unemployment is increasing, and that will give you a stagflating economy, which is cost inflation. And you're also going to see that even Naira will also be badly affected in the coming period.
Indeed. Dr. Yusuf, I'll give you the last word on this one. You mentioned that this needs to be taken up. My question to you now is, if this is being taken up, for instance, if the ad hoc committee decides to follow up on its meeting with Emefiele, what should they be looking out for now? What are the key questions you would expect them to have answered and actioned on?
Well, at this stage, I think we should be appealing directly to the president. So from all indications, the only person that the CBN governor respects and listens to is the president. The president has advisors. He has an economic advisor. And the president needs to be well advised that he has not been given the right kind of feedback as far as this policy is concerned. And that it should be immediately relaxed and should be allowed to flow for another 3 to 6 months. If the CBN doesn't have enough cash, they should allow the old cash and the new cash to be used side by side until gradually the old ones are moved out of circulation. That is the way to do it. And the president should also know that redesigning currency has no impact on inflation. It has no impact on effectiveness of monetary policy. This thing has no basis in economic theory or empirical studies. All those things are not correct. And he should also know that having 85% of cash outside the banking system is not unusual. Cash is not supposed to be sitting in the bank. Cash is supposed to be outside the bank. What is important is money supply. Very well. And 95% of money today is within the banking system. So all this stampede, pain, they are all completely unnecessary. Completely unnecessary.
Very well. Dr. Yusuf, Paul, thank you so much for your company here. I appreciate your time. Good luck finding the new Naira note if you're in need of it. But that'll be all for our conversation. That's all time will allow. Thank you so much. Paul Alaje is an economist. Dr. Muda Yusuf is director for the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises. Thank you, too, for watching us today. We'll be back here same time tomorrow. Good luck finding the new Naira note. My name is Keminni Amanor. Bye-bye.